and welcome to Culture on I-24 News. I'm Abed Groper. Thank you for joining me. Today we devote our show to a very special venture called This Place. It is a monumental photography project in which 12 leading international photographers were invited to come to Israel and take a fresh look at the country through their lens. The man behind it all is photographer Frederic Brenner, who gathered the different artists and also contributed his own point of view. I-24 News' Valeria Bekassis recently sat down with Mr. Brenner here in the Jaffa Port to discuss the project. Here's their conversation.
Hi, Frederic Brenner. Thanks.
Hi, Valérie.
Thanks for being here. We are here in the Jaffa Port, here in Israel. So explain us your huge project. We saw all day long on our channel extract of this project, This Place. Explain us.
The genesis of Makom Ze, This Place, starts in 1979. I go to Jerusalem and I am fascinated by this community who lives a few minutes from Damascus Gate called Mea Shearim, where people seems to have recreated a shtetl, seems to have recreated diaspora in the heart of Jerusalem, in the heart of the Middle East. And I spent 25 years traveling in about 40 different countries, 6 months in each of these countries, to question the notion of diaspora. What does it mean to live as a people in diaspora? What does it mean to live with a portable identity? And this is how the Jews have survived. When this project is finished, it is 2003, the peak of the Second Intifada, and I'm deeply disturbed by the way Israel is being portrayed. But I'm as disturbed by the way Jews, in a way, are victimizing themselves. I decided to come here and to try an experiment. And the working hypothesis is, what would happen if I would be able to invite 10, 15 of the most interesting artists of our time, not photo reporters, not photojournalists who are not given any more the time to do their job properly, but artists who have reinvented a grammar and a syntax for contemporary art, and to give them carte blanche to spend up to 6 months here.
So it was in 2006, 7,
2007.
8? So how many trips did you manage to convince those people to come here, those huge photographer?
I parallelly developed my working hypothesis, and photographers and sponsors became a sounding board for me to know really what did I want to do here. And then I interviewed about 30 people, out of which I decided that 11 would be the right one to come here and could have an interest. Both they had an interest and we had an interest. The entire idea is to try to look at Israel through what I would call une parole poétique, through a poetic approach.
So, by the way, poetic approach, don't you think with those 11 photographers plus you, this a little bit politic, or did you avoid the politic way to see this country and the situation in this country?
I didn't avoid. Let me just tell you what the working hypothesis is about. The entire idea is, again, to look at Israel, as I say, as place and metaphor. What do I mean by that? Israel as the place of the shared origin, the place where three monotheism, which gave birth to three major narratives, have been in conflict for the last 2,000 years. In other terms, to try to look at Israel as a place where the maps of the sacred overlap, compete, and ultimately exclude each other, to try to look at Israel beyond a dual perspective, for Israel against Israel, victim, perpetrator, to dare to look at Israel beyond the political narrative. We cannot ignore it, of course, and we don't want to bypass it, but the entire idea is to look at the archaic stakes before it becomes political and religious. And when I say Israel as place and metaphor, I mean Israel as a place of radical otherness, a place where every single person is the other of everybody else, close and far others, an Ethiopian for a Russian, a Moroccan for a German, an Arab Christian for an Arab Muslim, an Armenian for a Jew, and Israel as a place of radical dissonance.
The project is named This Place, Makom Ze. There is no Israel in the title. Why this decision to avoid the name of Israel? Because it fears?
The idea is just to enable viewer not to be trapped in words that they already know, and to enable people to look anew at this place. This was not at all to avoid, but it is, this place cannot be named. Each one name it in a different way. And to name it this place is an invitation for people to look anew to Israel and the West Bank.
Frederic Brenner, do you think those 11 photographers you bring here, some for the first time in Israel, do you think they understand the country? They understand the situation?
Most people had never been here before, except for 2 photographers, and I decided to create ad hoc informal think tank made of the most interesting actors of Israeli society, from writers to philosophers, from architects to archaeologists, from social workers, and the entire idea was to display in front of them the largest possible spectrum of narratives to get them totally confused, but on a very high level.
It's very beautiful words, they are very beautiful words, but at the end, the pictures we have on this huge project are really, really political. We're going to talk about it. I would like to know why...
I don't think those photographs are political at all.
We're going to talk about it.
They may have one layer because you cannot avoid it, but again, they play as a mirror, I think, for every single person who look at these images.
So, let's talk about the photographer. Let's start with Faisal Sheikh. Faisal Sheikh focused on the Bedouin here in the country.
Yes. He was interested in the way Bedouins have been sedentarized and also, eventually expelled from the land on which they lived. But his approach is very poetic, and at the same time, he's dealing with very difficult questions.
Let's talk about Stephen Shaw. He's the huge, how do you say in English, un enfant gâté, l'enfant terrible of the photography, and he plays on technical.
Stephen was interested to understand the land and to look at the land for what it is, beyond all the narratives and beyond all the disputation. He wanted to go and have this physical relation with the land and to photograph it.
Rosalind Solomon, women, you American?
Yes.
And she used to do dolls portrait, and in your project, she did portrait here in Israel of who?
Her project is a very ecumenical project. She traveled all around Israel and the West Bank, from Tel Aviv to Jenin, from Haifa to Beersheba, and she dealt with all kinds of people, from workers to musicians, from pilgrims to people on their boat.
Frederic Brenner, on this place, there are another huge photographer, Thomas Truss. Here is German. It was his first time in Israel. And how did you convince him to do this, to participate to your project?
Thomas accepted this invitation, even though he was asked many times in the last 10 years to come to Israel, but he believes he was not ready yet. And even though he had undertaken to revisit his own history as a German, he was not ready, and the working hypothesis appealed to him. He understood that it was not just another project about Israel, or not, a day in the life of Israel, but an invitation to look deep in the fault lines, and he's in his own fault lines. And the result is architectural landscape, the kind of images that we know of Thomas Truss.
We can imagine you had a lot of discussion, lot of talks with all those stars of the photography. Jeff Wall is one of the most famous in your project. He did one picture. Can you explain us in which way this one picture was made?
Yeah, Jeff was not so interested, didn't know, but he said, I'm ready to come to Israel and to see if there's anything that I can do. He make 3 or 4 images a year. So he came here in an exploratory mission like all other photographers. And we were in the south, and he met with Bedouins who were picking olives in a plantation. And he say, wow, he started to photograph, and that at the end of his trip he wanted to go back there. And within a period of a year he conceived of a photograph about those olive pickers waking up in the morning in this olive grove in the middle of the desert near Mitzpe Ramon, and he made one photograph which is just pure poetry.
because he's known to do the mise en scène.
Yeah,
Of,
and he restaged everything. We had to get the same olive pickers that he had met the year before to get the permission because they were from the West Bank, etc., etc.
this place, you say it's not political, but it's a little bit political. If we see the pictures of Mr. Nick Waplington, he works in plantation.
Even Nick Waplington, who work on settlements, Nick Waplington, who, like everybody, has political views, managed to look at those people. He went to 170 settlements. It's a real relevé of those settlements, portraying both the landscape, the human landscape, and the architectural landscape with an incredible humanity.
So let's talk about Wendy Ewald. She worked with 14 workers social here in the country.
Wendy is a true midwife for children's dream and nightmare, and she decided to work with 14 different groups of children and teenagers, whether a pre-army school of religious girls, whether the gypsy community in Jerusalem, whether a Druze 8th grade class in the Golan, and you really see the kishkas, you really see the subconscious of Israel looking at itself, because those children and teenagers were given cameras to photograph themselves.
We can imagine that you spent time and time to try to convince those stars of the photography. And then you had Mr. Martin Kolar, the Slovak, and he works on the violence and incongruity. I don't know how to name it in English, but the misfit of the country.
Yeah, he spent a lot of time. He spent about eight to 9 months here, and he wanted to show behind the look-alike normality of this country, that this country is everything but normal.
Let's talk about Mr. Kudelka. Obviously, he has how old?
Joseph Kudelka is
72?
started when he was 73. He's today 77.
He said he pays his own trip because he didn't want to be involved or to be...
Yeah, he was one of the photographers who really was afraid to be used, to be instrumentalized, and therefore insisted on paying his trip, until he acknowledged that it was truly a genuine invitation. And then he spent about 6 months on both sides of the wall of separation and did an incredible work, in the sense that his work go far beyond the political narrative. He's basically speaking for the land, and he's speaking for the scars on the land, and those scars are far too deep to be any longer ignored. And he said, how come people who live in this land, who call holy, can rape the land in such a way?
The work of Mr. Gilles Perez, the French guy, he works on conflict, Srebrenica, Rwanda. Yes. So you put this guy here in Israel, which is an amazing place. He works on what?
He works on how identities are being constructed. He works on longing, belonging, and exclusion. And this is what he's interested in. Of course, but the conflict, he wants to look under the conflict, how it is woven under the canvas.
And you, Frederic, what did you do here in this country? You're French, you're a photographer. What was your work? What was your desire?
At the heart of my working hypothesis, I was always interested in the promise which is attached to this land. When God speaks to Abraham, he tells him, the land I will give you to see, not the land I will give you to possess. And that was core to my working hypothesis. And I ultimately came here and called my project an archaeology of fear and desire. It's really about longing, belonging, and exclusion. This is what my work is about. It's an X-ray of the soul of people who live in this soil, on this soil.
Frederic Brenner, 7 years to put this project out of the ground. How much does it cost?
So a project would cost about $6 million.
Are you proud of the result?
It's very rewarding to see that this project have opened another space, that eventually it opened another space within each of us to accept paradox, ambivalence, discontinuity, foreign, everything that starts within each of us.
You told me last year when we prepared this special day on I-24 News that you wanted allow those people to not understand the country. Do you think your artist doesn't understand
I
the country?
believe the artists really dare not to understand this country, and I believe the artists truly dare not to connect the dots of what make up the fabric of this place.
This country is crazy, no?
It is crazy. Yes, it is. It
And
is.
it's why you
It is
love
a
it?
madhouse. Yes, yes. That's why I love it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Frederic Brenner. Thank you for your work. Thank you for this place. And we saw all day long all this footage on the I-24 News. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Valérie.